The crystalline spires of the Galactic Science Academy pierced the purple sky of Centauri Prime, their surfaces reflecting the light of 3 setting suns. Inside the Grand Assembly Hall, 15-year-old Nova Thompson fought to keep her hands steady as she adjusted her presentation materials. She was the youngest person ever to present at the Intergalactic Science Conference, and the first human to do so in its 1,000-year history. The audience before her consisted of the most advanced species in the known universe. Luminous Arcturians with their floating cerebral chambers, serpentine Vegacorp scientists with their neural interfaces, and the infamous Silicon Collective, beings who had long ago transcended organic forms. Among them sat the conference's hosts, the Proxians, their iridescent skin shifting colors with each thought that passed through their highly evolved minds. Next presenter announced the Master of Ceremonies, their voice resonating through the universal translator, Nova Thompson of Earth, presenting on quantum entanglement applications in faster-than-light communication. Nova stepped forward, her dark skin contrasting with the stark white of her formal lab coat. She had earned this spot through years of dedication, working countless nights in her grandfather's workshop, developing theories that her teachers had dismissed as impossible. Now, standing before the galaxy's greatest minds, she would prove them all wrong. Distinguished colleagues, she began, her voice clear despite her racing heart. I present a new approach to quantum. Is this some kind of joke? The interruption came from a Proxian scientist, their skin flashing dismissive patterns of orange and red. We're expected to listen to a primitive species' understanding of quantum mechanics. From a child, no less. Laughter rippled through the audience, a cacophony of different species expressing their amusement at her expense. Nova's cheeks burned, but she stood her ground, remembering her grandfather's words. They laugh because they fear what they don't understand. I assure you, Nova responded, keeping her voice steady, my research is sound. If you'll allow me to demonstrate. We've monitored Earth's technological development. Another voice called out, this one belonging to a member of the Silicon Collective. Your species has barely mastered basic space travel. You still rely on chemical propulsion for your vessels. The arrogance to think you could contribute to quantum theory is fascinating. More laughter followed, but Nova noticed something in their tone, not just mockery, but a hint of something else. Concern? Fear. She pressed on, bringing up her holographic models. My theory suggests that by applying a reverse polarization field to entangled particles, we can. Enough. The Proxian head of the conference rose, their skin now a deep purple of authority. We indulged this presentation as a courtesy to the Human Alliance, but we will not waste valuable time on primitive theories. Miss Thompson, you are dismissed. Nova stood frozen, her carefully prepared presentation hanging in the air around her. Years of research, countless sleepless nights, all dismissed without even a chance to explain. But as she looked at the condescending faces before her, something shifted inside her. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about humanity's place in the galaxy. You're afraid, she said quietly, but her words carried through the hall. The laughter stopped abruptly. You're afraid because you can't predict us. Humans don't follow your careful, logical progression of technological development. We make leaps. We innovate in ways you can't anticipate. The Proxian leader's skin rippled with patterns Nova had never seen before. You dare. I dare because that's what humans do, Nova continued, her voice growing stronger. You mock us for using chemical propulsion, but did you know we went from our first powered flight to landing on our moon in just 66 years? While you carefully plot each technological step over centuries, we take giant leaps into the unknown. The hall had grown deathly quiet. Nova could feel the weight of thousands of alien eyes upon her, but she didn't falter. "You didn't invite me here to share knowledge," she realized aloud. "You invited me here to put humanity in its place, to remind us that we're new to the galactic community, that we should wait our turn and follow your rules. But that's not who we are." She began shutting down her presentation, each hologram dissolving into particles of light. "I came here to share my research, but I can see now that you're not ready for it. Not because it's primitive, but because it challenges everything you think you know about quantum mechanics." As she packed up her equipment, she could hear urgent whispers among the audience. The Silicon Collective representatives were conferring rapidly in their digital language, while the Arcturians' cerebral chambers pulsed with increased activity. "Ms. Thompson," the Proxian leader called out, their tone slightly changed. Perhaps we were hasty in our dismissal. Nova paused, her hand on her quantum tablet. "Were you? Or are you just worried about what I might develop on my own, without your supervision?" The silence that followed confirmed her suspicion. She smiled, remembering all the times in human history when the impossible had become possible simply because someone dared to try. "I'll make you a deal," she said, turning back to face the assembly. "In 6 months, I will have a working prototype of my quantum communication system. When it works, not if, when, I expect a formal apology to Earth and recognition of humanity's right to develop technology without your oversight." The Proxian leader's skin shifted through a rainbow of colors before settling on a deep blue of resignation. "And if you fail?" "Then you'll have proven your point about humanity's capabilities," Nova replied, knowing full well she had no intention of failing. "Do we have an agreement?" The assembled scientists broke into urgent discussions, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of chaos in the great hall. Finally, the Proxian leader spoke. 6 months, Miss Thompson, not a day more." As Nova left the assembly hall, her head held high, she could feel their eyes following her. They thought they had just called her bluff, that they had given her enough rope to hang herself with. What they didn't understand was that they had just given her exactly what she needed. A chance to prove that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in following the rules, but in breaking them to forge new paths. Walking back to her ship, Nova pulled out her research notes, already mentally refining her designs. She had 6 months to do what the alien scientists claimed was impossible. 6 months to prove that humanity deserved its place among the stars. She smiled as she fired up her ship's engines. They had no idea what they had just started. Deep in the Colorado Rockies, where pine-scented air met ancient stone, Nova's grandfather's workshop hummed with energy. The converted mining facility, carved into the mountain itself, had been her sanctuary since childhood. Now, 3 months into her 6-month deadline, it had become her fortress of solitude. The workshop's main chamber glowed with the soft blue light of quantum containment fields. Holographic equations floated in the air, their ghostly forms casting shadows on walls lined with tools both terrestrial and salvaged from off-world tech. In the center stood Nova's prototype, a device that looked deceptively simple, a crystalline sphere housed within a framework of iridescent metal. Power sequence initiated, Nova muttered, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. The sphere began to pulse with an inner light, its crystal facets refracting patterns that shouldn't be possible in normal space-time. Recording test number 47. Above her, hidden cameras installed by the Galactic Science Academy monitored her every move. They had insisted on observing her work, claiming it was standard protocol for any significant technological development. Nova knew better. They were watching for signs of outside help, waiting for proof that humanity couldn't achieve this on their own. The sphere's pulsing intensified, and for a moment, Nova held her breath. This was further than she'd ever gotten before. The quantum fields were stabilizing, the entanglement patterns holding steady. Then, with a sharp crack, the crystal sphere shattered, sending shards flying against the containment field. Damn it. Nova slammed her hand on the workbench, frustration burning in her throat. Behind her, she heard the soft whir of the alien cameras adjusting, probably capturing her failure in high definition. Having troubles? A smooth voice asked from the doorway. Nova turned to find Ambassador Zinra of the Proxian delegation, their skin rippling with barely concealed satisfaction. The ambassador had taken to making surprise inspections of her work, each visit dripping with condescension. Just another step in the process. Nova replied coolly, already beginning to clean up the debris. Each failure teaches me something new. Zinler glided into the room, their movements unnaturally fluid. Perhaps it's time to accept that some barriers aren't meant to be broken. Your species' determination is admirable, but there's no shame in acknowledging your limitations. Nova continued her work, refusing to meet the ambassador's gaze. Funny thing about human limitations, they tend to disappear once we stop believing in them. We used to think breaking the sound barrier was impossible too. Ah yes, your species' famous optimism. Zinler's skin shifted to a patronizing shade of yellow. But there's a difference between breaking the sound barrier and rewriting the laws of quantum physics. Nova finally looked up, a slight smile playing on her lips. Is there? Because from where I'm standing, they're both just rules waiting to be broken. The ambassador's skin darkened. You have 3 months remaining, Miss Thompson. The galaxy is watching. Don't make your species' position worse by failing spectacularly. After Zinner left, Nova waited exactly 17 minutes before activating her quantum scrambler, a device of her own making that created a temporary blind spot in the alien surveillance. She had precisely 3 minutes before they noticed the malfunction. Moving quickly, she pulled up her real research, the calculations and designs she kept hidden from prying eyes. The public project, the one she let them monitor, was a convincing decoy. The real breakthrough was happening in plain sight, masked by careful misdirection. The aliens expected her to follow their established theories of quantum mechanics, to work within the framework they had defined over millennia. But Nova had realized something during those first failed attempts. She needed to stop trying to speak their scientific language and create her own. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory. Sometimes the best way forward isn't a straight line. He had been talking about prospecting for gold, but the principle held true for quantum physics. The aliens had spent thousands of years perfecting their understanding of quantum entanglement, refining it into a precise science. But what if their very precision was limiting them? Nova pulled up her latest calculations, the ones she kept only in her mind until these brief moments of privacy. The solution wasn't in making quantum entanglement more precise. It was in embracing the chaos inherent in the system. Human minds, with their illogical leaps and intuitive connections, might be uniquely suited to understanding this approach. The scrambler's timer blinked a warning. 1 minute remaining. Nova quickly memorized the new adjustments she needed to make, then erased all trace of her true work. By the time the alien cameras came back online, she was back at her workbench, appearing to struggle with conventional quantum theory. That night, as stars wheeled overhead and the mountain winds howled around the workshop, Nova made her first real breakthrough. In the privacy of her own mind, she solved the equation that had been haunting her for weeks. The solution was elegant in its apparent wrongness, It violated half a dozen established quantum laws, but it worked. It worked because those laws had been written by beings who thought in straight lines. But her victory was short-lived. The next morning, she discovered signs of tampering in her workshop. Subtle things, a tool slightly out of place, a data crystal with fingerprints that weren't hers. Someone had been there during the night, someone who could bypass her security systems. The game was changing. The aliens weren't content to just watch anymore. They were actively interfering. Nova secured her most important research deeper in her mind, knowing she couldn't trust anything physical anymore. 3 months remained until their deadline, and now she wasn't just racing against time. She was racing against those who would do anything to see her fail. As she stared at her damaged equipment, Nova felt a calm clarity settle over her. Let them interfere. Let them try to stop her. They didn't understand that every obstacle they placed in her path only proved how afraid they were of what humanity might achieve. And fear, as her grandfather always said, was just proof that you were onto something big. Nova began rebuilding her prototype, this time with a few surprises built in for any unwelcome visitors. The real work, the work that would change everything, was safely locked away in the most secure vault they couldn't access, the human mind's ability to make impossible leaps of logic. The mountain winds continued to howl outside, nature's own reminder that the most powerful forces often went unseen until it was too late to stop them. The tension in the United Earth Council chamber could have been cut with a knife. Nova stood before the assembled representatives of humanity, her voice steady despite the weight of the news she had just delivered. Outside the towering windows of the New Geneva facility, the first snow of winter was falling. "They're sabotaging my work," she repeated, letting the words sink in. "And it's not just random interference. They're getting more aggressive." Admiral Reyes, a veteran of Earth's first contact wars, leaned forward in her seat. Her weathered face bore the scars of humanity's early encounters with hostile species. "You understand what you're accusing them of, Miss Thompson. The Proxians and their allies are technically our protectors under the Galactic Charter." Nova pulled up a holographic display showing her workshop's security logs. "Last week, my quantum stabilizers were deliberately miscalibrated. 3 days ago, someone introduced a virus into my computational matrix. Yesterday," she paused, bringing up the final image. "Yesterday they tried to make it look like an accident." The hologram showed the smoking ruins of her workshop's power core. If she hadn't noticed the subtle signs of tampering, she would have been there when it overloaded. "They're getting desperate," Nova continued, "because I'm close. Closer than they ever expected me to get." The council chamber erupted in whispers. Chancellor Petal raised a hand for silence. "Ms. Thompson, you have 6 weeks remaining until your deadline. If what you're saying is true, perhaps it would be wise to withdraw from." "No." Nova's response was immediate and firm. "That's exactly what they want. They're not just trying to stop my project anymore. They're trying to prove a point about humanity's place in the galaxy." She brought up another hologram, this one showing the latest communication from the Galactic Science Academy. The message was diplomatic in its language, but clear in its threat. Earth's status as a protected world could be revoked if it was deemed technologically unfit for galactic society. "They're using my challenge as an excuse," Nova explained. If we fail, they'll use it to justify restricting Earth's technological development. They'll claim it's for our own protection, but it will amount to technological colonialism." Admiral Reyes cursed under her breath. "They'd been planning this from the start. The moment you challenged them, you gave them the opening they needed." Nova nodded grimly, but they made a mistake. They underestimated how far I've come, and they underestimated what humans do when backed into a corner. She waved her hand, and the holograms shifted to show her latest work, or rather, what she wanted everyone, including the aliens, to see of her latest work. The real breakthrough remained safely hidden in her mind. "I need two things from the Council," Nova stated. "First, I need you to publicly express complete confidence in my work, despite the recent accidents. Let them think their sabotage is working, but that we're too stubborn or naive to see it." Chancellor Patel's eyes narrowed. "And the second? I need access to the quantum vault beneath Mount Cheyenne, the one we've kept hidden from our galactic friends." The chamber went dead silent. The quantum vault was Earth's best-kept secret, a facility that predated First Contact, containing technology that humanity had developed independently, free from alien influence or observation. Admiral Reyes spoke first. "The vault's existence is classified at the highest levels. Even confirming it exists in this chamber is a violation of protocol." "We're past protocol," Nova replied. "The aliens are making their move. We need to make ours." After hours of debate, the Council finally agreed. As Nova left the chamber, Admiral Reyes caught up with her in the corridor. "You're playing a dangerous game, girl," the Admiral said softly. "If they catch you using technology from the vault—" Nova smiled. "They won't catch me, because I'm not going to use anything from the vault. I just need to study it, to confirm a theory. Sometimes knowing something is possible is all you need to make it happen again." The next 4 weeks were a blur of activity. Nova made a show of struggling with her public project, letting the aliens see her frustration mount as their sabotage took its toll. But in secret, during carefully timed blind spots in their surveillance, she worked on her real device. The breakthrough came 3 days before her deadline. Nova was deep in the quantum vault, surrounded by examples of humanity's independent technological achievements, when everything clicked into place. The solution wasn't in the vault's technology. It was in the proof that humans could develop advanced technology without following the aliens' prescribed path of development. That night, as she made the final adjustments to her hidden device, Nova detected another attempt to breach her workshop's security. But this time, she was ready. As the intruders, sleek, shadow-like forms that could only be Proxian special operatives, slipped through her defenses, they found exactly what she wanted them to find: apparent proof that her project was on the verge of catastrophic failure. What they didn't find was the small quantum core, no bigger than a marble, that Nova had already completed. It sat in plain sight, disguised as a simple decorative paperweight on her desk, containing within it the proof that would change everything. As the deadline approached, Nova could feel the aliens' satisfaction growing. They thought they had won, that humanity would be put in its place. They didn't realize that in pushing her so hard, in trying so desperately to stop her, they had only proven how right she had been all along. They were afraid of humanity's potential, and in less than 72 hours, they would discover just how right they were to be afraid. Nova picked up the quantum core, feeling its slight warmth against her palm. In its crystalline depths, impossibility had become reality, not through following the established rules of science, but by daring to break them entirely. The final countdown had begun. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Science Academy was packed beyond capacity. Representatives from every advanced civilization in known space had gathered to witness what they believed would be humanity's greatest humiliation. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation and barely concealed smugness. Nova stood at the center of it all, her simple black uniform a stark contrast to the ornate biomechanical robes of the alien dignitaries. The quantum core sat on a pedestal before her, still disguised as an unremarkable paperweight. Above, thousands of sensors scanned every molecule in the room, searching for any sign of outside help or technological trickery. "The time has come," announced High Chancellor Vex of the Proxian Science Council, their skin shifting in patterns of judicial authority. "Nova Thompson of Earth, you claimed you would revolutionize quantum communications. Your deadline expires in exactly 1 standard galactic hour. Present your findings." Nova took a deep breath, remembering every slight, every act of sabotage, every condescending remark that had led to this moment. But instead of anger, she felt an almost serene calm. They had no idea what was about to happen. "Before I begin," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber, "I want to thank the Proxian Science Council for their attentive monitoring of my work these past 6 months, particularly their nighttime inspections of my workshop." A ripple of unease passed through the Proxian delegation. Nova continued, her voice taking on an edge of steel. "I also want to thank the Silicon Collective for their various attempts to corrupt my data, and the Arcturians for their creative use of quantum interference fields. Really, I couldn't have done this without you all trying so hard to stop me." "These accusations, High Chancellor Vex began, but Nova cut them off. "Unnecessary. I agree, because none of your interference mattered. In fact, you did exactly what I needed you to do. You were so focused on stopping what you thought I was building, you never noticed what I actually built." Nova reached for the quantum core, holding it up to the light. The seemingly simple crystal caught the light, refracting it in impossible ways. "You all believe you understand quantum mechanics because you've spent millennia studying it, categorizing it, forcing it to follow your rules. But you've become so devoted to your understanding that you've forgotten the most fundamental aspect of quantum physics. It defies classical logic." She placed the core back on the pedestal and pressed her thumb against its surface. The crystal began to glow with an inner light, patterns swimming through its depths that made several alien observers look away in discomfort. "Humans are illogical," Nova continued. "We make intuitive leaps. We see connections that shouldn't exist. We break rules simply because they're there. And that makes us uniquely suited to understanding quantum mechanics in ways you never could." The core's glow intensified. Around the room, every piece of quantum-based technology, from the universal translators to the environmental controls, began to respond, resonating with the core's energy. "This device doesn't just enable faster-than-light communication," Nova explained. "It fundamentally redefines what's possible with quantum entanglement. Want a demonstration?" Before anyone could respond, Nova pressed her thumb against the core again. Instantly, every quantum device in the room synchronized, their displays showing the same impossible data stream. But more than that, every being in the room felt it. A sensation of connection, of distance becoming meaningless, of space itself folding in ways that shouldn't be possible. "That sensation you're feeling," Nova said into the stunned silence. "That's true quantum entanglement. Not the limited version you've been using, but the full unrestricted potential of quantum mechanics. Every device in this room is now operating as a single quantum system, regardless of the space between them. The Silicon Collective's representatives were the first to understand the implications, their digital minds racing to process the impossible data before them. One by one, the other alien delegations realized what they were witnessing. A technological leap that shouldn't have been possible for centuries, if ever. How? The question came from an Arcturian scientist, their cerebral chamber pulsing with intense curiosity. Our greatest minds have tried for generations to achieve this level of quantum coherence. That's exactly why you failed, Nova replied. Your greatest minds think in logical, orderly patterns. Quantum mechanics isn't logical or orderly. It's weird, counterintuitive, and completely contrary to classical physics. In other words, it's human. She turned to face High Chancellor Vex, whose skin had turned a pale shade of shock. You wanted proof that humanity deserves its place among advanced civilizations. Here it is. We didn't just match your level of quantum technology, we surpassed it. Not by following your rules, but by breaking them entirely. The demonstration continued for another hour as Nova explained the principles behind her invention, or at least the principles she was willing to share. The real breakthrough, the fundamental insight that made it all possible, she kept to herself. Some secrets were best kept by the species that had earned them. As the session ended and the implications of what they had witnessed began to sink in, Nova noticed a change in how the alien representatives looked at her, at all the humans present. The contempt was gone, replaced by something new, respect tinged with fear. Good, she thought. They should be afraid. Not because humanity meant them harm, but because they finally understood what they were dealing with. A species that didn't just think outside the box. They refused to acknowledge the box existed at all. As she packed up her device, Nova smiled to herself. This wasn't just a personal victory, or even a victory for Earth. This was a reminder to the galaxy that underestimating humanity was a mistake they couldn't afford to make again. The age of human quantum innovation had begun, and the universe would never be the same. 1 year after Nova Thompson's quantum demonstration, the landscape of galactic politics had shifted dramatically. The Great Hall of Earth's newly constructed Quantum Innovation Center hummed with activity. Its architecture, a blend of human creativity and alien technology. Through its transparent quantum crystal dome, the Colorado sky stretched endlessly above, a reminder of humanity's expanding horizons. Nova stood at a viewing window, watching teams of human and alien scientists working together below. The sight still amazed her. Proxian quantum theorists collaborating with human physicists, Silicon Collective analysts debugging code alongside Earth's AI specialists, Arcturian researchers sharing centuries of knowledge while eagerly learning human intuitive approaches. Quite a change from last year. A familiar voice observed. Nova turned to find Admiral Reyes approaching, her uniform now bearing the insignia of Earth's new quantum defense initiative. They're still watching us, Nova replied, nodding toward the subtle monitoring devices that the alien delegations thought were hidden. But now they're watching to learn, not to control. Speaking of control, the Admiral said, lowering her voice, the Proxian High Council is still demanding access to your original quantum core design. Nova smiled. And they'll keep demanding it. But some discoveries need to stay in human hands, at least for now. The real breakthrough, the fundamental principle that made her quantum core possible, remained Earth's most closely guarded secret. It wasn't just about maintaining a technological advantage. It was about ensuring that humanity's development remained truly independent. A commotion near the main laboratory drew their attention. A young human scientist, barely out of university, was excitedly explaining a new theory to a group of bewildered alien researchers. His hands moved animatedly as he drew impossible equations in the air, his logic leaping between concepts in a way that made perfect sense to the humans present, but left the aliens struggling to follow. That's the third breakthrough this month from the junior research team, Admiral Reyes noted with pride. The aliens still can't figure out how we're advancing so quickly. They're looking for a pattern that doesn't exist, Nova explained. They expect progress to follow a linear path, each discovery building logically on the last. But human innovation doesn't work that way. We make intuitive leaps, we follow hunches, we stumble onto solutions by accident, and then figure out why they work afterward. A soft chime announced the arrival of the afternoon data stream from the quantum communication network Nova had helped establish. In the year since her demonstration, the network had expanded to cover most of known space, revolutionizing interstellar communication and commerce. But more importantly, it had changed how other species viewed humanity. The Arcturians are requesting permission to establish a permanent research facility in orbit. Admiral Reyes mentioned, checking her datapad. The Silicon Collective wants to increase the number of their observers here, and even the Proxians are talking about a joint defense initiative. Nova nodded, watching as another group of scientists below achieved what appeared to be a successful test, judging by their celebrations. They're adapting faster than I expected, learning to think more like us. Is that a good thing? It's an inevitable thing, Nova replied, just as we're learning from them. The difference is, we're not trying to copy their methods. We're incorporating their knowledge into our own unique way of thinking. The quantum core in Nova's pocket hummed softly, a constant reminder of how far humanity had come and how far they still had to go. She pulled it out, watching the impossible patterns swirl within its crystalline structure. The aliens still couldn't understand how such a small device could hold such power, because they were still trying to understand it through their own rigid scientific frameworks. You know what the best part is? Nova said, turning to the Admiral. They're finally asking the right questions. Not, how does this work? But why didn't we think of this before? A group of young alien students passed by, part of the first exchange program between Earth and other worlds. They wore expressions of excitement and wonder, their traditional scientific training already beginning to blend with human creativity. We're changing them as much as they changed us, Admiral Reyes observed. The galaxy will never be quite the same. That's what they were afraid of all along, Nova replied. Not that we would fail, but that we would succeed in our own unique way. That we would prove there isn't just one path to advancement. As the sun began to set, casting the laboratory in golden light, Nova reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The ridicule, the sabotage, the doubts, all of it had only served to prove humanity's greatest strength, the ability to turn obstacles into opportunities. The quantum core pulsed one final time before going dormant, its power contained but never truly at rest, much like humanity itself. In its depths, Nova could see the future, not a future of rigid hierarchies and prescribed paths, but one of endless possibility, where human innovation and alien wisdom combined to create something entirely new. Ready for tomorrow's demonstration? Admiral Reyes asked as they prepared to leave. Nova smiled, thinking of the new breakthrough she was about to unveil, one that would once again challenge everything the aliens thought they knew about quantum physics. They think they're ready, she replied with a hint of mischief in her voice. But they haven't seen anything yet. The universe, after all, was infinite, and humanity was just getting started.